Hello, hi, welcome to another booktube video. I'm not sure why at the moment I seem to want to record videos in the middle of a heat wave in the UK. This is our third one this year so far. And I know compared to some countries, it's not really that hot. But you know, we're not built for it. We don't have aircon. But I'll try and make this as quick as possible. This video is all about Jane Austen and Sense and Sensibility. So a quick disclaimer, I did actually read this last year during Jane Austen in July, but it kind of came at the point where I was having one of my slumps and I just kind of stopped reading afterwards. So I didn't actually make a video for it. So I thought, you know, I'd have to. So I reread it, and these are my thoughts. So Sense and Sensibility was Jane Austen's first published novel, published in 1811, when she was about 36, 37, I believe. 1811, that would make her 36. And yeah, so at that point, she was near the end of her life. She passed in 1817 at the age of 42 from an illness. So it's quite strange to think that this was actually her first published novel. Although, if you look at her history, you can see that actually she was writing from a younger age, in the late 1700s. And actually, Sense and Sensibility was thought to be a reworking of something she wrote in the 1790s. But yeah, it's also strange to think it's her first published novel because of how good it is, how well it's written. So Sense and Sensibility really tells the story of two sisters, Elinor and Marianne. They have a younger sister as well, Margaret, and they live with their mother, Mrs Dashwood. So the story begins when they are living at Norland. It's a wealthy estate. Mr Dashwood is very ill. He's on his deathbed. Now, Mr Dashwood had a previous marriage. His wife, I believe, died in childbirth and gave birth to his eldest son. Now, Norland wasn't Mr Dashwood's estate to begin with. It was his uncle's, and he inherited that, and part of the inheritance was he had to promise to give, on his death, the estate to his son, meaning that his now wife and three children, three daughters, would receive nothing. So on his deathbed, he's pulled his son to him, and he's kind of made him promise that you have to do something for my wife and children, for my daughters. Please tell me you are going to take care of them. So that's how the story begins. And then we see Mr Dashwood Jr. coming to live at Norland with his wife Fanny. And so the interaction we see at the beginning between Fanny and John Dashwood is what kind of made me, or indicate to me, that this is going to have some humour in it. It's going to be a little bit funny. Not that it's going to be a complete comedy, but there's going to be some humour to it. The alteration between the two when they're discussing what John should do for his sisters or half sisters, and the way Fanny keeps berating him, pegging him down, saying, "Oh, I don't think your father would have meant to, to give them that. That's just excessive. I'm sure he much preferred you to do this." And we see the back and forth until actually John promises to give them no money and just help them out every now and again. So we see in his character, he's, a bit passive. I don't know if he's doing it for an easy life or if he's just that way. But yeah, that was the first indication that this was going to have some humour in the story, and there's a lot of humour going forward. I feel Jane Austen is really clever with using the humour to kind of break up the serious parts of the novel. There are some serious parts, there is some drama, it is a bit dramatic, but it's also a bit saucy. You kind of think, although obviously published in 1811, if Jane started on this story in the 1790s, some of the topics, unwed women getting pregnant, you kind of think, ooh, this is getting, a bit racy for that time period. So Jane Austen, she breaks up that sort of the seriousness of the story with this humour, and it is so impeccably placed. There's characters such as the elder Miss Steele, who I think is hilarious, as well as Mrs Jennings as well. So yeah, we see them come to live at Norland. Now, while there's no necessary rush to push Mrs Dashwood and her daughters out of Norland, it's kind of said, oh, you'll be looking for somewhere else, I assume, soon. Then Fanny's brother, Edward Ferrars, comes to live on the estate for a little bit to visit, and we see this romance blossom between Elinor and Edward. So her mother's like, not too keen on them moving too soon. She wants to see how this romance blossoms. But then Fanny comes up to Mrs. Dashwood and, kind of indicates that, as the eldest son of quite a rich family, Mrs. Ferrers, the mother, is very rich and, intends to bequeath Edward a great sum. So because of that, they intend great things for him, including his marriage. He should marry really well. And it's put in a way that, to put Mrs. Dashwood out. So at that point, she's determined that they're going to leave. They're not going to stay in England, more than a week. They need to get out. Now, just by luck or coincidence, at that same time, Mrs. Dashwood receives a letter from one of her cousins, Sir John Middleton, to come and live on their estate. So Sir John Middleton, fairly rich himself, has a nice estate, and on that estate at the edge, there's a cottage. He doesn't say it's anything grand or, it's going to be lower than what they're used to, but the rent is fairly amiable. So they decide, let's go. So Mrs. Dashwood and the three daughters move off to this cottage, Barton Cottage, on this estate, and it's in Devonshire, all the way from where it's based. I should have really looked this up, somewhere in Sussex. So they move themselves off to this cottage in Devonshire, and we follow the story of what happens, and it's mainly to do with the two sisters and their relationships. So we have Elinor's relationship with Edward, and we also follow Marianne. So she attracts an elderly suitor, Colonel Brandon, but she's not in love with him. And she then has a chance meeting with John Willoughby, who she falls in love with. And we see the story of the heartbreak that both sisters go through, but the irony of how they both deal with these in a completely different manner. So one thing to mention, the title, Sense and Sensibility. So I always like to look something up if I'm not completely sure, because I understand what would mean by the modern term sensibility, but it didn't really make sense to me in terms of the story. So actually at the beginning of this version is a great introduction, which kind of explains what sensibility meant in that period, sort of in the late 1790s, when probably Jane was first working on this. And it means kind of emotional. So we have sense and emotion, if you like. And it's, the way these two sisters deal with their life situations. We have Elinor, who is very headstrong. She deals with her own heartbreak silently, internally, as not to make situations around her even worse, because Marianne is dealing with her own heartbreak, and she is very emotional. So we see Marianne as this person with sensibility. Everything is dramatic, emotional. She cries this, cries that. And what's nice, we follow the story, and Marianne kind of does a full circle where she doesn't believe you can love a second person. Once you fall in love for the first time, that's it. She also wants someone to match her emotional sort of feelings towards art, towards life in itself. And she doesn't see that with Colonel Brandon, and that's why she has no interest in him whatsoever. But we see how when she falls for Willoughby and she's kind of sort of wronged by him, how emotional that gets her to the point of being extremely ill. And then she has time for reflection to be like, actually, my sensibility has made this situation and made it a whole lot worse, and has made me realise that actually this isn't what true love should be like. Shouldn't make me ill to the point that I'm on death's door. And so we see a nice sort of full circle. I'm trying to say as much as I can without giving too much away, although I'm sure if you're watching this, you've probably read the book, you've seen the adaptations. But yeah, I absolutely loved it. I can't believe it's the first published work of Austen's. And I also can't believe, when I've read a few people's sort of views on Austen in general and her works, that a lot of people prefer sort of Mansfield Park or Pride and Prejudice. I haven't read those, so I can't really say, but I absolutely love this. And I don't know if it's having that first book effect like I had with Jane Eyre and the Brontes. Like, Jane Eyre is my absolute favourite. It's the first book I read of the Brontes. It's the first book really I read from the classical period, sort of like, Victorian era, or any classical book, I mean. And so I don't know if that's why I love it, or because I actually love it because of its quality, but this is what I'm feeling with Austen's work. Like, I just don't see how you beat this. So I'm happy to be, proved wrong when I read the rest of them. But I shall leave those to other Jane Austen Julys. Obviously, I'm reading the group read Emma at the moment, but I haven't really got along too far with that, I've recently found that I cannot read two books at the same time because I get really confused. Dashwoods and Woodhouses. So I read about 5 chapters of Emma and I've stopped, but now I'm going to pick it up and kind of really beat on with that. So I really love how Austen can really encompass this clever writing that has the drama and the misery, but also the lightheartedness as well. I think it's so clever for a first novel, but obviously, as we said, she's been writing long before this. But it's just really clever, and the topics covered as well just seem so much more contemporary. When you think that this was published over 200 years ago, the writing is so accessible. Like, it was easier to read than some of the Victorian books that I've read, that were published 50, 60 years later than this. I found this so easy to read. Yes, there's some bits that kind of show that the writing is old. Instead of spelling words a certain way, contemporary way, like stopped, we would say stopped. It's stopt, and choose chuse. But apart from that, that doesn't make it difficult to read. You just kind of spot it and move on. But yeah, so accessible. And so clever. And the writing style at the time, I imagine, was fairly sort of new to the readers of that period as well. I did read in the introduction as well that a lot of sort of the romantic novels of the time were written in a way like of letter exchanges between characters. And while Austen does sort of utilize letter exchanges, we get a few letters in the book to tell a bit more of the story or move the story along. It was probably a fairly newish experience for the readers of the time. But still, it feels so contemporary for today, for me anyway, as a fan of these sort of classical literature. And the pacing is really good as well. The chapters are pretty short, between 6 and 10 pages, which I really like. It really helps me get along with reading a book. If I see a book has chapters which are 20 to 30 pages long, it's kind of like, because, I like to stop at chapters. When I'm putting a book down for a bit or doing whatever, I like to stop at the end of a chapter. I don't like stopping halfway through. And when I feel like I have to because the chapter's too long, I don't know why, it just bugs me a little bit. But anyway, so that's my thoughts on the novel. I've also watched 2 adaptations. So I believe the film, was it 95 or 96? Emma Thompson starred as Elinor and also did the screenplay. We had Kate Winslet as well as Marianne. Alan Rickman as Colonel Brandon. And I want to say it's Hugh Grant, wasn't it, as Edward Ferrars. It stays very true to the novel. I've read online, some people say that they feel it's their most sort of truthful adaptation. And it is, pretty much. There's a lot of the language used in the screenplay from the book. Obviously, because it's a film adaptation, they've had to chop some bits out. They get rid of a few maybe unimportant characters. So like Sir John Middleton's wife, she is explained as being deceased. Probably explains why Mrs Jennings, the mother, still lives with Mr John, or Sir John, should I say. And I don't know if I'm not going to get confused now because it was a while ago I watched it. If we see the elder Miss Steele, we obviously have Lucy Steele because she's quite a main character, if you like, especially for Elinor's story. But I can't remember seeing the elder Miss Steele, and she's one of the funny characters. And that's what I like about the TV adaptation I saw, which I believe was 2008. Both of these available if you're in the UK on BBC iPlayer. Which also very true to the text, but I feel they can be more true because it's set over 3 episodes, hour long each, a bit longer than the film. They can be a bit more true to it, so they include those characters that I said weren't in the film version. And it's such a shame for the film version because in the TV series, the elder Miss Steele is one of the funniest characters, and it's exactly how I imagine her in the book. Although the Mrs Jennings I probably prefer from the 1995 film. That's how I imagine her in the book as well. But both adaptations really good, very true to the book as well. I recommend both of those. I love them both. Obviously, I love Dan Stevens as well, and he's Edward Ferrars in the TV series, the 2008 TV series, and I love him. So, so that's my thoughts on Sense and Sensibility, nearly. And I loved it. I can't really say any more. It's brilliant. I don't know how any other Austen book is going to stand up to it, but I'm excited to see if they do. Obviously, I'm reading Emma at the moment. instead of trying to read Sanditon alongside that, I'm going to try and maybe finish Emma before the end of the month. And then Sanditon's like only 60, 70 pages. You know, it's the last novel Austen was working on, so it's unfinished. But I know they've made a TV series of it. I'm not sure, I haven't watched it, whether they stay true to what was written, or obviously because it was unfinished, they make their own ending, or they make their own direction for it. I don't know. Anyway, that's my thoughts, that's my plans. Thanks for watching. What's your favourite Austen? Let me know down below. I always love hearing your suggestions and your comments. Until next time, thanks for watching. Bye.